Hey everyone, how are we all doing? My name is Jean and you are seeing me on my YouTube channel. Was going to put this on my Spotify and my other places where you can find my podcast, but this seems to be the easiest way to do it. The intermission, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to work those in on the episode in the actual podcast, but I wanted to just kind of recap. It's been a minute since I've been on here, and that's kind of the point for these intermissions. Just kind of, no matter how much time goes on or whatnot, I will probably always do an intermission. And then in the future, if you want to skip over them, you can skip over them. But I'm wrapping up the McMartin case that I have been talking about that happened in 1983, that I had explained how it changed our court system and actually where it all came from. It came from the Satanic Panic, and Michelle remembers, from the infamous book. Now, the reason I started with Satanic Panic in this series of delusion and psychosis and religion is because, at least for my generation, I was born in 81, so growing up and then coming into like of age, basically, in the early 90s, and that's kind of when it was wrapped up. And by then it had been too late. It had been too late. The damage had been seriously done in the decade that all this stuff had come out. But as you all know, there was more shit going on in the country during the 80s and even the 90s besides Satanic Panic and the McMartin case, because bad things happen all the time, especially when it comes to children, unfortunately. Now, with religion and psychosis, I kind of touched upon it with Michelle, right? She went into a full-blown psychosis that was kind of pushed and guided by her psychiatrist. That's just one example. There was another psychiatrist, I believe that I brought it up, that was part of Satanic Panic, who later on, she had been disbarred, I believe, because she was using recalled memories. I had a certain feeling about recalled memories, like feeling as in certain strong opinions about it, until recently, until I personally had not any kind of that fact, but I had blocked something out of my memory. And if I would not have been a person who keeps journals, I probably would have been stuck in a state of confusion because I forgot a lot of things. And so with that being said, how recalled memories are actually done and treated, that's where I guess I would be skeptical in terms of, like, if I seek that out in psychiatry, I would be very, very, very cautious of who I would go to. Just kind of like if you're about to have major surgery, which I have. I didn't walk into that major surgery, which was brain surgery, of just handing somebody the keys and saying, I trust you. Sorry, not that person. And you really shouldn't be either, because at this point we've seen what terrible people can take advantage of. And so therefore I did my research and I looked into the hospital, I looked into the doctor. That's just the example. I would do the same when it comes to anything to do with the brain, including psychiatry. So there is a occult leader. I'm afraid to say her name because she's had a lot of things expunged, but she is a product of Satanic Panic, and I'm really sorry. And her first name is Teal, and I'm not going to say her last name. It starts with an S. If you're interested, you can look her up as well. Although she is kind of hard to find nowadays because they did a Netflix series on her, and that is actually, it hasn't been expunged, but it's really hard to find that documentary that they did. But that is just something I'm just going to mention. There are a few religions that I'm not touching because I don't want anybody coming after me. One of them starts with the S. I had gone to Florida, did the whole shebang. I was going to do it. And then I'm seeing what's happening now. And Leah Remini, I hope I'm saying her last name right, has actually asked people not to. So I'm not going to do a piece on them. I might scratch the surface a little bit, but actually probably not. I actually took down all my pictures of it, like the whole shebang, because that particular organization has been very well known to go after people. Teal has too. So I just don't want that kind of heat. But, and then there is one, I'm actually saving the one that I am going to mention, who I wouldn't be surprised if I was flagged or whatever and whatnot. And that has to do with what's happening in 2026 and Christian nationalism. I gave it away. I'm trying to give perspective to help people see how all of this is correlated. Satanic panic. McMartin was just a product of satanic panic, so that's not really that this or that. But with Christian nationalism, that's what I walked the line with, the fine line. So much that I'm not even acknowledged now, probably because I'm doing this and I can't keep my mouth shut. I couldn't keep my mouth shut as a kid either. But I walked with my father and my mother and my brother alongside a lot of Christian nationalists and quite a few of evangelicals. At least that's how I understand it. If I'm wrong, send me a message. Point it out, correct me, because I have no feedback with these videos yet. So, so with that being said, with the Christian nationalism and evangelical church, it has a certain, I guess people just are not really seeing it or understanding it the way a lot of us do see it. I know I'm not alone because I've had these conversations my whole life with people about this stuff and how out of the pocket, out of the box, a lot of this is. It's actually helping me as an individual because I'm researching a lot of different religions. And there's one thing that I've kind of noticed, right, with split offs of religion. Now, if you don't know about religion or you just know what you are, and you don't know where it came from, in order to understand religion, you kind of have to study history. It is a given. I realized this about 25 years ago, and I actually wanted to get into religious studies when I was thinking about going to college in my early 20s. And I actually couldn't go into the religious studies that I wanted to because I am a woman. And this was at a Catholic university, and I was not allowed to take certain courses. So I am the type of person that if you tell me that something is not possible, right, I'll probably giggle and say, okay, anything is possible. Or I won't say anything at all, and I'll just kind of go a different way, different route. And that's pretty much what I did. I realized that I needed to study history, and that's eventually what I enrolled into college for. Unfortunately, I didn't finish, but that's not irrelevant. However, though, I didn't pay somebody to teach me. Instead, I talked to a lot of people. I did my own research. I still do my own research. It takes me a little bit longer just because if you want to show me a different way or a quicker, easier way, I kind of learn as they go. Now with religion, you have to understand Christianity. You do. Christians, Catholics, evangelicals, Protestants, Pentecostals, you weren't first. Jews were first. And the Roman Catholics. That's kind of the story of Jesus. The Jews crucified Jesus by the Roman hands. Okay, Rome had a huge factor. It's probably why Italian Catholics are Italian Catholics, very strong in their faith because, they kind of worked hand in hand, right? So there's more, of course, of educating as to how that happened. But speaking from the Catholicism side, right? So you have your Jews and then you split off to your Roman Catholics because, that's where Jesus was crucified. I believe it was in Rome. believe. Actually, no. Shit. I know I'm wrong about that. I just can't think of the top of my head. I don't have notes. That's what this whole thing is about. But anyways, Catholics, then Protestant. Yep, Protestant. One is about, or I should say the difference between Catholics and Protestants. Catholics are about ritual. When you walk into a Catholic church on Sunday morning, did you ever hear the joke of just learn to sit, stand, and kneel? That's it. That's probably the only action they do, except they pray out loud. They sing, they sing their choir. Not very lively, pretty boring, actually, if you're young, like I was. Beautiful side of the spirituality, right? But that's just the basics. Protestants, y'all are fucking loud. You're loud. You're very, very loud, uplifting, revolutionary, end times. That's really what you need to understand, okay? Protestant, Catholic. Everything that came after that was probably not a branch of Catholicism. Maybe. But when you start to look stuff up, like I have here recently, Pentecostals come from the Protestants. Separatists, talked about, or in my earlier videos, I brought up William Brewster and the Mayflower, separatist Puritans. That's a branch of Protestant. Revolutionary, or not revolution. Loud. Okay, remember holding signs? I'm sure all of you have seen some sort of medieval movie in your times, or there's a movie out now called The Quakers. Protestant, I think. But I just learned a fun fact that I did not know, is that in early settlement, not early America, because we weren't in America yet, early settlement times, it was against the law in Puritan times to associate with a Quaker. Or, I think it was the Quakers, because they had the Dutch. It was against the law. You could be hanged if you got caught associating. I'm also going to be bringing up about that too, the Puritans. And hey, why not? I come from it, so I come from a very long line. I can't deny that the separatists turned into Puritans, and what came after was not why they fought to come here. I think that kind of ended after William Brewster died. I learned that his daughter Patience, the one I'm actually related to, she only lived to about 30. And Thomas Pence, the man who she married, I believe, opinion, that it was an arranged marriage by her brother, because her brother Jonathan came over on a boat later. I believe it was the Frontier. I get it mixed up because the Holman boat and that boat, Fortune, I think it was the Fortune. Anyways, it's irrelevant. Thomas Pence was with Jonathan Brewster. So as soon as they landed, he introduced them. And Patience was considered an elite, just like William Brewster. He was an elder. So she was kind of a big deal. She only lived till about 30, had 2 kids. She got smallpox. So that's for you anti-vaxxers. She died of smallpox. So the point that I'm trying to make, because I know this is a lot of tangent and I'm a tangent girl, so all of this stuff is connected. Everything has an outcome. Everything has a consequence. Everything, if it's ignored or tried to be buried, or, as they say, you stick your head in the sand, there's consequences of it. We've seen it all kinds and crazy correlation ways. We go through the same shit over and over and over. And here in America, in the United States, this July 4th is our 250th anniversary of a born nation, right? Anything prior to that, obviously, we weren't considered United States yet. We were still kind of under the control of England, which I believe England at that time of William Brewster were Protestant. So when they say that, you know, religion and politics have no place in government, it's because of past history. We know that this does not work. My ancestor, William Brewster, just was tired of watching his people die and being prosecuted and thrown into jail. His story, his biography is pretty amazing because you actually are able to understand and see why he was the way he was. He was suppressed along with his wife and along with the rest of those people. And what happens with suppressed people? They eventually get louder and louder and louder. You can't make people do shit that they don't want to do. And that's what we're seeing now. You're seeing two sides of a country being completely divided. And they all want to say, well, actually, it's a lot of reasons why we're so divided. But the biggest one right now is because this agenda is to separate people by what they believe in. Not just with politics, but also with who you pray to. So much so that we have not seen a ripping or a tearing away your religious ideologies or views or, you know, people, let me start here. When in the United States, when they present themselves as they want to be an organized religion or to be recognized, right? We all hear the bad shit about how, you know, it's tax-free from the government, this and that. And there's a lot of perks that the government can do to a certain point because of the First Amendment. Now, I totally forgot what I was like, the point that I was going to make. ADHD is, it's tough. Oh, what we're seeing now. The Department of Hexeth, Department of Defense has just dropped 180 recognized religions. And what's funny about this, sarcasm, because it's not funny, I think it's interesting that when you look up these organizations that are no longer recognized, this has to do with Satanic Panic and the correlation. Before I finish that, let me take you back to the early 80s when we were talking about Satanic Panic. The Christian evangelical church, the ones that were really holding on to these values and these ideologies of you couldn't, you know, watch this on TV, you couldn't listen to this type of music, it was all evil, it was the devil, and you're going to hell, and blah, 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 right? And you're evil and you're a Satanist. You're a Satanist, you're a Satanist. You worship the devil if you listen to Ozzy Osbourne or you listen to AC/DC, and those things were said to me. You're going to hell. Right. Well, you know who took the blunt of that? And this is so taboo that most people don't really care, but they should care because they go after these people first, and I can guarantee psychologically you're thinking, oh my God, okay, well, I don't like them. That's okay. It's better them than me. Well, guess what? That's how suppression starts. It starts with them, and then it comes after you next. Even the ones who you thought you could say anything and have no consequences. When you are in a dictatorship, there's always consequences. And this is honestly the first step. In those religions, or organized religions, is the Satanist church. They have been attacked and pretty much had their fingers pointed at them in the early 80s during Satanic Panic, and then also again in the early 90s when all of this stuff came back up. Roe versus Wade came back up, separate, like all this religious stuff. There was tons of riots. It was right around the time when Rodney King, so there was tons of racial stuff that was happening in the early 90s. We are in a fucking repeat is what's happening. The only difference is these old, like my generation, right, when I was a little kid, they were young too. And they were being conditioned. They came back 10 times stronger. And that's what we're seeing right now. And I'm curious to see how the Satanist church is actually going to handle this, because Now, for you people that are freaked out by Satanists, let me just tell you a little fun fact about them. They're actually not to be feared. And the reason why you don't fear them is because they don't even believe in Satan. They don't believe in God. They're atheists. 90% of them are atheists. They just want to be left the fuck alone and be allowed to not practice and not be reminded and have religion constantly thrown in their face. They're the ultimate rebels. They call themselves Satanists because they know that it's going to piss you off. And they're also not afraid of retaliation. You know, it's kind of the whole eye for eye thing. You know, so many people bring up, you know, I've heard a lot of Christians bring it out, oh, eye for eye. What do you think Satanists really are? You mess with them, they're going to mess with you right back. You leave them the fuck alone, they're going to leave you the fuck alone. They have absolute autonomy. They believe in every ounce of autonomy. If it's spiritual, if it's, you know, and I'm not trying to tell you to go to them at all because, you know, it is a different kind of lifestyle. They do like their dark things, but it's just taboo. And it's just for shock value. It's kind of like Marilyn Manson. I'm not saying Marilyn Manson is a fucking Satanist. I highly doubt it. But that was also my generation. Columbine was also my generation. They try to blame that on Satanists as well. So they finally did it. They finally wiped it off and completely made it so that they can't even be a recognized religion. Also, Druids. I'm laughing because Druids, their religion, what is left, is older than Christianity. You know, don't forget the Christians, you know, invaded into Ireland and Scotland and wiped them out and converted. St. Patrick, he was Catholic. He returned to Ireland to save them. They were Druids. So seriously? And then Norse religion, which are Vikings, same shit. They actually, it's probably because they don't, most of them don't like Christians because they hold on to their history. And considering Catholics, you know, cut them off, England cut them off over in Iceland. So history, people, world history. You may say that, oh, it has nothing to do with me. If you're comfortable with praying to anything, I mean anything, right? Don't they teach you in the Christian faith to not have tarot cards, to not have Ouija boards, to not have anything that it goes against God, so you don't open channels to things? This is what Catholics teach you, right? They don't want you to open channels so anything can come in, so because they're afraid of possession, okay? Now, if you're okay with trusting someone, anyone, a random preacher that, you know, you don't know, okay? Or you do know them, okay? Let's say I got to keep that option open too, or you do know them and you trust them. The moment you start asking questions of who you're praying to and they get mad, if you're comfortable to pray and open yourself up and your soul, to give your soul to anything, that's your decision. That's what I believe. It's your decision. That's your soul. You decide who you pray to or who you give it to. It's called free will. And they teach you that in the Christian faith as well. So I'm at 23 minutes. I didn't expect this to be a half an hour long, but yeah. So my next wave, because I'm wrapping this up, my next wave into this third episode is I'm going to wrap up a little bit of Satanic Panic. I'm not going to get into it as much as I just got into it now. And I hope to be able to find a nice little wave to be able to get this into the Christian nationalism. I have a direction that I'm going, so hopefully that, you know, this is received well. But all I can do is put these out and hope somebody watches them. And if they don't, then like I said, then they don't. I really do think that people think that I am going in a direction that I'm not going in, because now more than ever, nobody's responding about these videos. So if you don't know me and you watch this, please leave me a comment, because people in my life are not commenting at all or trying to give me any kind of help. So I'm blind in this. And at this point, I've been doing it long enough that I wouldn't want it any other way. And when people do start giving me, you know, different ways, I hope I can receive it. So, but cheers, y'all. And hopefully you like my new painting in the back. It's my new little backdrop. And hopefully see you soon. Okay? Always, 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 no matter what, stay authentically you. Okay? Even if it's uncomfortable, it doesn't matter. Just do it. Bye. Cheers, y'all. Till next time.